This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, here on November the 30th, 2022. Boy, we're coming down to that final month of the year. It'd be really nice if COVID would go away, so you'd be rid of that, but nonetheless, I work with it every day or night in the hospital, so and knock on wood, I haven't gotten it yet.
That's
But
good to hear. Good to hear.
yeah, but we're not here to talk about that junk because we're here to talk about other things, because I have on the show with me today one of my fellow co-producers from 13 Fanboy, who's been on here before. And 13 Fanboy will be a very brief talk because we're celebrating something else. You see, Star Wars is celebrating its 45th anniversary, and I've watched this guy show endless merch on his Facebook, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to talk about that on here today, and see what this guy has to show. I don't have any merch with me right now, right here, because really it's about this guy's merch. Folks, I give you the absolutely awesome Tony, and I'm going to try not to butcher your last name, Tony
Um,
DeBenedetto?
that'll work. DeBenedetto. Yes, sir.
Almost had it. I think it's a cool name. Just my screw up,
No worries. Get stuck in your tongue trying to roll that off.
And I remember when you were on before the fish. Look at those
Yes,
fish behind you.
the fish. You get a shot.
Yeah, look at those fish.
So what you may not have noticed is that just recently, some of the fish decided to dump some babies. So we've got probably about 40 or 50 young ones in there that gonna have to try to give to the neighbors or somebody. So they're taking up the tank here.
They're they're increasing their army.
They are.
They've watched you with your Star Wars bit, and they're creating stormtrooper fish.
There's something like that, and there's a couple of them in there that probably are stormtroopers. The way that they act. So
How you doing, man?
doing well. Doing well. Like I said, just been an interesting, year and a half. Like you were referencing earlier, the COVID situation. And so it's nice to see that people are actually being able to get back out into the world and I won't say put it behind them, but at least not worry about the scare. In other words, most everybody's been exposed to it to some degree or another, and have either contracted it, gotten vaccinated, or have addressed the issue somehow, some form or another. So hopefully, it's one of those things that throughout history we've had these pandemics, and hopefully, it's just one of those situations where now people have kind of been exposed to it, and let's move on with our lives.
You know what? I haven't got it, but I do work at the hospital. Started working there in March, and good job. I work as one of the housekeepers, and I'm exposed to that stuff of every shift, but I don't go into it worrying about it though, I mean, if I have to do a terminal room, I robe up and I go in and do my stuff and walk out. I have some really, really wonderful coworkers, which really helps, and
Right.
yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound careless, but I just never worried about it, It's
Right.
I was back in our movie theaters in July of 2020. So, so I, it's just, it's not that I
But
shouldn't worry about it. It's that I just aim to do my work and go home, I tested this stuff. I got the little boxes here for it, but I've never tested positive for it.
right.
So, Yep. So there you go. But nonetheless, I love that little fish tank there behind you. Is that they your only pets? You got a dog or a cat or anything?
I actually have two dogs. One's chowing down right now, so he's kind of looking at me like, "What's going on?" And so doesn't recognize the voice. So he's
Yeah, but I love those fish there in the background. Do you still have that big one there?
the pleco is still there. The goldfish, unfortunately, passed. So let's see if we can turn that. See the
There you go. Oh boy, look at that.
he's probably about 16, 17 inches long now. He's a big
Oh
boy.
wow.
So
Yeah, wow. I this is kind of off topic, but what got you into getting the fish? How long have you been doing that?
um only probably about 3 or 4 years. We ended up just getting, goldfish and the pleco and had some other fish and they didn't do too well. So those were kind of the last two survivors. And they kept putting them in a bigger tank, so they got bigger and bigger as time went on, and finally this one got to a point to where we need to put him in a bigger tank, and so seemed kind of lonely, so we got a few more of the was it Dalmatian mollies, I think is what they're called, and they just you know went to town, and so we're probably on about the sixth or seventh generation of the mollies now. Kind of put out every so often. We'll go into the neighborhood website and chat channel, say, hey, we got some fish if anybody wants them. And, probably gave away 20, 24 or so about 2 months ago. And then, like I said, they popped a bunch more out. So we're, I hate to say it, but maybe someone could use them as fish food or, or, to brighten up their tanks or what have you. So it's just one of those, as they come along, we'll deal with them as they come. It's like trying to figure out how to make money if I could like sell them or something, but always a side hustle, right?
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm wearing my one of my 13 Fanboy t-shirts.
Of it.
Now you saw that in the theater, right?
I did. I was
See, I
able,
didn't have that luxury
yeah,
because it didn't come here. And I'm gonna be frank, I wish I didn't see it online. I saw it on YouTube, which apparently I guess it wasn't supposed to be on YouTube, but that's where I saw it. But nonetheless, I wish I didn't see it online because there's just something about seeing something in a movie theater that is just a little bit special,
right.
you know? So that's the first time I streamed something and possibly the last, but if the only reason I did stream it is because whenever Halloween Kills came out before that, we know how things are online. Like me, I'm very protective of spoilers, even when movies are 50 years old,
Sure.
It's just I don't feel right doing that. And when Halloween Kills came out, it was no more than if it came out Thursday, then Saturday they were doing spoilers. So they were doing spoilers the next day,
Right.
and the reason they do it is because they want to be the first ones. They need to get hits, likes, and all of that stuff. And I don't have a huge amount of subscribers, because it's not something that I don't make money at this. It's not something that I do this for fun.
Right.
I don't go into this trying to compete with everybody else. If I get views on my channel, great. That's nice. If I get likes and whatnot, fine, wonderful. But I don't go into it thinking, well, should I be the first one to spoil this just so I can selfishly get views. And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from, you know?
Sure.
So I knew about Halloween Kills before I even saw it because I was at work. And yeah, I know I could have not listened, but at the time that I wasn't working at the hospital. I was working at another cleaning job. So overnight you stick your headphones in, you listen to stuff, you know? I don't do that at the hospital because one, it's a hospital, and number two, I'm kept very busy enough to not to be bored, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So when 13 Fanboy came out, I was like, I was met with that dilemma and I was like, I probably should stream this because I put 3K into this movie, and I really didn't want it spoiled. So I did the streaming, but I wish now I wish I hadn't because I wish I just stood my ground because it's like I should have saw that in a theater, but unfortunately it wasn't here in the theater, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Now you saw it in the theater. What was that experience like?
I enjoyed it. I mean, like I said, it was the theater aspect was more kind of that scenario where kind of was more busy looking at who was involved and what was going on, and more, instead of like really focusing on the story and watching that, was more or less seeing my friends and people that I'd met working on the film, and it's like, oh, that's the take they ended up putting in there, and that kind of thing. And so, to be honest, the experience was great. I mean, it was awesome to see everything up on the big screen, but at the same time, it was a little distracting because it was more focusing on the people that were in the film than necessarily the overall story and the film itself. And you know, it was interesting because it really wasn't until I saw it like the second or third time that I was like, okay, I can actually, I've already got all that out of the way. Now I can actually sit back and relax and see the cinematography and the lighting and sound, and actually pay attention to the movie itself, as opposed to all the behind the scenes distractions, if you will. Because as you're watching it, um, while you're there, especially if you're on set or able to see some of the behind the scenes, and you're like, oh yeah, we were doing this at that point in time, or oh, we had problems getting people quiet, or whatever the situation was, to excuse me, to be able to enjoy the film, right? And you're kind of like reliving the moments as you're watching it, because you can kind of piece together what you were doing behind the scenes while this other stuff was going on. So, like I said, it probably took about second or third time actually watching it to really be able to focus and sit through it as like I would a regular movie, so to speak.
Yeah, my name appears right there where your name is in the opening
Right.
credits.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And my bloody picture is in it as well, so that was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I think for a first time, I believe it's Debbie Sue's first feature. I know she's done stuff prior, but not a bad job, not a bad job.
yeah,
There was nice tension in that opening scene that had her in it. Um, I love the Spring Schultz kill scene.
right.
Christopher Norris, of course, had an interesting death scene in it. So yeah, there was some interesting stuff in the movie for sure.
Right.
So, but like I said, I wish I could have saw it in the big screen. So, um,
Yeah, and unfortunately, it wasn't, available everywhere. I mean, even myself, I ended up driving about 7, 8 hours in order to see it, because they didn't have it here locally in my area either. So,
wow,
um,
you got more patience than me.
well, it was one of those things. I had the time to be able to do it, and so I went ahead and made the drive and made a weekend out of it, and had a good time.
Did you take the fish?
Nah, they wouldn't have survived the 7 hour drive.
Yeah, but you
So
know what? You're 8 hours away from them, you know, and
well,
they might protest.
that's true. They dirtied up the tank while I was gone, so I guess they did have a bit of a protest there.
They were plotting.
That's right. Waiting till I leave. So,
Well, you know what? It's nice to know you through 13 Fanboy, you know. But we're going to talk today about Star Wars.
woohoo!
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I was 5 years old when Star Wars came out. I saw all three of the original trilogy at the drive-in theater, which don't exist here anymore.
Right.
They left us in the mid 80s, mid to late 80s. But we saw the Star Wars trilogy in the drive-in, you know, and there were scenes in those movies that just captured my imagination. I always loved the creature canteen scene. I loved the droid scene with the Jawas, you know, because you see George Lucas at his most creative in those scenes. It's like,
Right.
where does he come up with this kind of creature, you know? Where did this come from? These odd looking creatures, you know? And so I've always loved those, and so we saw Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi all in the theater, and I saw them all on their re-release with the added footage and stuff like that when they come out for the anniversary 20 years later. Hard to believe now it's 45 years later.
Yeah.
And I've attended a special screening of Star Wars Under the Stars Classic Film Series, which hasn't gone on since COVID hit. And during COVID, they were doing some special screenings at the mall, and I attended a couple screenings of Empire Strikes Back, and I was able to reappreciate that a little bit, you know. Seeing stuff on the big screen um, gives you a different perspective, you
And
know. But you,
there are some movies that just have to be seen on the big screen. I mean, the smaller screens, even if you have a 80-inch TV at the house or whatever, just does not do it justice of having it up on the big screen. And I think Star Wars was one of those films, and I think it was even more critical when you got into the prequels when everything was more kind of digitalized, and so having it on the smaller screen, I think, kind of hurt that if you weren't able to see it on the big screen, right? Because of how much digital imagery they had going on. That to me almost seemed like it was definitely one that needed to be seen on the larger screen as well.
what was your reaction whenever the prequels come out?
It's funny because get into these discussions with diehard fans. There's some that are like, the first three are the only Star Wars that ever existed, and they're the only ones that matter. And and everybody's welcome to their own opinion, obviously. But personally, when the prequel came out, I thought I thought they did a good job. I still think it was one of those situations where the technology um, is still trying to catch up to what the movies were, right? And so, it's obviously very expensive and very tough to do practical effects for everything there. And so, being able to use the digital world, um, you know, gave the ability to create some things that just, I won't say were impossible using practical effects, but would be much more difficult, much more time consuming, much more expensive, most likely to get that done. Um, Personally, I like the storyline of the prequels, and but I did feel that they felt too much like a video game, because of all the digital imagery. So for me, you know, even though I did like them, I appreciated them. There's a lot of people that would argue that, but for me, like I said, I enjoyed the story, what was going on behind it. I actually liked the fact that they, worked with the digital medium. But again, I still think some of it, because it was so digitalized, that it came off, like I said, looking like a video game as opposed to a live action um, piece of work. Um, Now that being said, go to the sequels, and again, a lot of people weren't real happy with those. I again, personally, I like them. And what I did really like about that, though, is that you saw the where they started actually being able to bring the practical and the digital effects together. And it was very difficult, and a lot of times, to be able to separate the two. In other words, that the technology had come to such a point to where there was more of a seamless blending or editing of the work, to where they brought the digital, the green screen aspect, the um, regular, just practical effects, because there was a mixture of them. And I felt that, even though people may not have liked the storyline very well, I thought that the actual presentation of the films was, in my opinion, good. So, that
Absolutely.
in my perspective.
For me, I love the original trilogy. I really enjoyed Force Awakens,
Mhm.
and I really enjoyed Rogue One.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Rogue One a lot. I went to that a couple times. Um, those were the ones that my go-tos as far as the franchise go. I certainly have memories seeing them all. I've seen them all in the theater, so that's kind of since my childhood my go-to thing, But and yeah, they need to be seen on the big screen. Do you have a favorite in the franchise?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because I like different ones for different reasons. But if you go back to, more of the original side of things, I think Empire was probably my favorite there. And again, I'm going to caveat these and not stay on the hook here, because, like I said, there's different reasons for the different films. But um, so Empire Strikes Back, I think, is probably my favorite one, because it kind of brought the the not the true climax, the second act, if you will, where everything starts getting interesting. You start seeing where things are kind of tied together, and how different the story arcs are linked together. And so, for me, but again, remembering, like what, probably 10 years old, 9, 10 years old when that came out. So I'm probably thinking back how I thought I would have thought, if that makes sense. But I enjoyed them for what they were. Now, again, like I said, there was all that different story arcs that were kind of being melded together, and you're able to kind of see different things coming out of it. And so for me, that was probably Empire. But again, one that's really, really starting to grow on me is, like you mentioned, Rogue One. I really enjoyed that. As a matter of fact, I was um, had the privilege of actually attending the red carpet premiere for that in LA. And so, again, that kind of gives it a little more meaning there. But just the story, what I loved about it was the fact that it was dark,
Yep.
and you had these people that were uh, dealing with a cause, and they were literally putting their lives on the line for this cause. And so, the fact that if it would have had the happy ending where, you know, they survive, and everybody goes off and does their own thing, they escape the empire one more time, I think it would have not had the same effect of the, hey, you know many people died to get this, and it reminded me, honestly, being from Texas, the Alamo, which, from what I understand from some of my film friends who own theaters, were stating that when the movie displays and things came for the theaters, that they had remember the Alamo was on the boxes so that people wouldn't know that it was Star Wars stuff. And so for me, it kind of like even hits home even more because something that took place in the state that I'm from, and it was again one of those against all odds. Everybody got wiped out, but that sacrifice allowed something else to take place, which furthered the cause. So again, it was a like I said, Rogue One is really kind of starting to be one of my favorites in the series. It also has a secondary scenario because Donnie Yen, I'm a huge fan of Donnie, and so when I saw that he was in the movie, man, it just like I grew up with martial arts and what have you, and so he has his series, the Yip Man series, which was Wing Chun and a martial arts story, and that had impact on me because it's kind of a storyline where uh, my father's instructor was taught by Bruce Lee, who was taught by Yip Man, and so there's kind of that genealogy, if you will, in the martial arts world that Donnie Yen represented playing. And so I kind of got the best of both worlds, having the martial arts aspect along with the Star Wars aspect and combine the two together. And so for me, that was kind of even a bigger reason for the Rogue One to kind of stick out from, in my life anyway.
Two things that really stood out to me from what you're telling me. One thing Rogue One really did is, I mean, Darth Vader was always an intimidating presence, but holy cow,
Yes.
you really get to see him go crazy brutal.
Right.
Uh, that was interesting. I perked right up on my seat during the said scene, you know. I also loved how it tied into the opening of New Hope, you know. And we're getting into this whole thing. I think the first time I recall seeing it was Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow with Laurence Olivier, who of course was no longer with us, and
Sure.
they're getting to the point now where they can digitalize actors, you know. And I thought was really interesting. You saw Peter Cushing all through Rogue One, despite the fact he's been gone since the '80s, you know. And of course, he was the commander in um, New Hope. So I guess the estate gave them permission, and you got Peter Cushing, which was actually I thought was kind of cool.
Right.
Where technology has gone.
Yeah, no, like I said, I enjoyed that. I thought that the digitalization of Leia was a little off. I think they made her face a little fatter than what it normally is, and so um, you know, but again, having just lost Carrie at that time, and I thought it was a great tribute for her, and so I'm really glad that they put that in there.
I remember when Star Wars came out. It was one of my favorite Christmases. I remember I was at my grandparents, and my brothers and we all got one of those small cases. And inside I remember opening that up, and there was like 20 action figures in it, and it was glorious, And I remember, some of these figures that were in there, I remember, Greedo, Hammerhead, Snaggletooth, Walrus Man, Death Star Droid, Jawas, and all these weird looking creatures that were in these little slots in this case, and that was a really good Christmas that year, and all these creatures and whatnot, and just enhanced my imagination. Um, and then growing up with it, you get more. I've got a few that are packed away because this is really kind of a temporary location here, but I've still got a few not old figures, mind you, because
Sure.
when you're a kid, you don't understand the value of things and things get broke.
Right.
I don't know how these people that still have the original figures that are packaged, how they did that, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, I haven't got anything from back then because, well, that's what kids do. you know? But I do have figurines here, some of the special editions, uh, Princess Leia, Han Solo. I got Greedo, and I got Boba Fett, and these nice packages. They're still in the packages, and I don't know what box I have them in. But I remember one of my fondest memories is I come home from school one day, and Mom had came around the corner, and she had Princess Leia in the white with the earmuffs hair. She had that figure for me, you know? And that was a memory for me. And it was at the time, before we even had the upstairs to our house. And just one of those memories. And I remember when I bought the reissue of Princess Leia, that was the thought that was going through my head. It's like, who knows what I did to that Leia back then? Because you're a kid,
Right.
But I got a Princess Leia in the white with the earmuff hair and all that, and it's just, yeah. So talk about your memories with Star Wars. Now, did you see them all in the theater like I did?
Yes, I did. I did. I remember the. I don't. I remember seeing Star Wars in the theater. But I don't remember standing in the long lines that, everybody talks about. Now, I probably did, but for Star Wars, I don't remember that. Now, Empire Strikes Back, I do remember that. It was like a 3 hour wait and what have you. And it was just, you know, the excitement of, what's going on and whatever. But I do remember seeing Star Wars in the theater. And like everybody else, it's so cliche that's a Star Wars fan, but that Star Destroyer just pops out on the screen, and the scrolls going up, and John Williams music just blaring and booming out is just totally stuck to you. And then as the story goes on, you've got the good guy, kind of the bad guy, the space puppy, if you will, Chewbacca and what. And so it was one of those moments that because nobody had really ever seen anything like that. Even what was this Space Odyssey,
2001 Space
2001,
Odyssey. Yeah.
and even you had around the same time, Buck Rogers, 25th Century, you had a Battlestar Galactica, and so you kind of got that feel, but Star Wars just, in my opinion, just like overshadowed all of those other space type movies, and so. But I think it just kind of goes to it had a good story, behind it. And so, and anytime you've got a good story, it's going to be successful. If you tell it right and the 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 arcs all join together and there's a good versus evil, there's um, starts to be kind of a love relationship or hope to be, kind of thing. So all these, things that end up in having some kind of a hope associated with it, for a better lack of word, um, is what made it such a great story. You know, um, Kind of going back to the martial arts realm. When I saw Darth Vader and the stormtroopers with that samurai look to them, to me that was just like, man, that is just so cool. Not knowing that they were necessarily the bad guys per se, but it was that imagination. As a matter of fact, um, an artist friend of mine did a rendering of Darth Vader in kind of a samurai outfit, and I was able to get that original print from him, or not the print, but the original painting that he did for that. And then when I saw it, I was just like, man, the stormtroopers are cool too. So I commissioned him to, do a stormtrooper version of that, which came out really awesome in my opinion, and but that samurai, effect, just kind of gave weight to the stormtroopers and Vader specifically. So,
Absolutely. Well, if I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
uh-oh.
Okay. Who would you say would be your top 5 favorite characters? And that's for
From
all the everything.
wow, uh, that's that is a tough question because if you go into the extended universe and all of that, it makes it a little tougher. I would say, Chewbacca is probably one of my all-time favorites. And, that's just because, he had that loyalty. It didn't matter what you did, what kind of trouble, he was like that best friend that you had that, you know, gets drunk and whatever. And, it's like, oh, great, I'm gonna have to go pull this guy out of trouble again. That was kind of that was Chewbacca. It didn't matter what you did, he was always there. He had your back, and he's just kind of a lovable creature, if you will. Um,
Yep.
and then I guess would have to go to some from the newer stuff. Ahsoka is one of my favorites from the Clone Wars, and especially the older Ahsoka after she's kind of been trained and going through the Jedi, and decides that she doesn't really want to be a Jedi, so she kind of walks away from the Jedi Order, but she's still kind of a good person at heart all the way through. And she's probably one of the only people that really knew Anakin, who really knew Anakin, and what he went through during that transition, and why he did the things he did. And of course, he's everything comes around full circle. Anakin being a kid who just got snagged from his parents, and his mom and what have you, and then ends up being the bringing balance to the Force. But I think it's interesting that when people think about bringing balance, they always assume that it's the good side, right? And so there's like they were like always on his case about you were supposed to bring balance to the Force. You were supposed to be you weren't supposed to be the to destroy everything, but in order for there to be bad, there has to be good. So if you've got too much good going on, then it just logically makes sense that there's got to be an evil that balances that out. And I thought it was kind of a interesting turn of events that that's kind of how that storyline went. It's just like all of a sudden, there's so much good, they haven't had problems, the empire, whatever. And now all of a sudden, this negative or evil force comes along, and now supposedly everything's being you know going into chaos and everything like that. But then it comes back around where, okay, now things are coming to evil, and so now he ends up coming back to the good side, bringing that kind of, he was still the balance to that force, in the sense. So um I think it's just kind of interesting though how when people think about bringing quote balance to the force, they always assume that they have to be good in order to bring the balance. Well, not if the balance is too heavily weighted on the good side, so to speak. So
Mhm.
just my own again
Yeah, it's an
thoughts there,
interesting take on it.
you know. And again, there's an organization that Alvin Johnson put together, which was the 501st, which they do charity work all over the world. and it, known as Vader's fist. The interesting thing about it is that, there's always the argument from the other side, right? Is like, well, none of this would happen if they wouldn't have kidnapped this poor kid from his parents, and threw him into all of this stuff. And, all of a sudden he becomes the traitor and whatever, but he did that because he was trying to find a way to save, keep his loved ones from dying. And, so it's kind of that back and forth of like, okay, well, who really are the bad guys? The rebels came along and they're blowing up everything, and they're, supposedly doing this for the good of the galaxy. So it's an interesting, it's like how things are developed on perspective. Is it right or wrong? It depends upon your perspective. That's kind of a one of those scenarios where, again, since you don't know all the facts that took place, who's to say they were in the right or in the wrong? Anyway, I digress. Going back to the characters, obviously, I enjoyed Anakin just for the full circle. He kind of
Yeah.
represented, life. You're born, you kind of go through these trials, good and or bad, and you have to make that decision. And sometimes the decisions you make in life aren't the best or most popular. um, and then there's consequences associated with that. And so he felt those consequences, but at the same time was able to um, realize the path that he went along, was not the path that he really wanted to be. He just kind of found himself not knowing how to get out of it. And, from my perspective. And so, um, that's, like I said, it's like us. We end up taking our own paths and doing whatever it is, right, wrong, or indifferent. There's rewards, consequences to everything we do. So, it just, again, so Anakin slash Vader was, is one of my other ones. R2 obviously was one of those, characters, again, that to me boggles my mind of how did Anakin slash Vader not recognize R2 when he came into the Death Star? People say, well, astromechs are, there could be millions of astromechs that are painted the same way and everything else, but R2 had a personality to him, and it's just like, I don't understand. Again, this is kind of looking back, like, well, how did Vader slash not recognize R2, especially when he saw 3PO? He built 3PO. So how is it that he didn't piece those things together? Again, it's kind of irrelevant information, but it's one of those things where, but again, R2 is, he's kind of that lovable character. He had attitude, again, he was always there. While people argued, he would figure a solution out and go take care of it, right? And then let everybody else deal with what they needed to do. Of course, Yoda, being the grandmaster, the wisdom behind everything, I kind of toss up between Yoda and Obi-Wan because, again, Obi-Wan understood everything that Anakin went through. He and Ahsoka were kind of like the two best friends or people that really knew who Anakin was before everything, went to the dark side. And, they knew his personality the way he could be. And so the fact that, they were always constantly kind of believing that, there is still good in this guy, just based on their relationship, having been around him so much. And so, again, like I said, but Yoda being the wise master that didn't look like anything, he just looked like an ordinary person, one of those people that or creatures that people wouldn't even really, you know, give too much attention to. But in that smallness, he was powerful, and so again, size matters not, so he's one of my other ones.
Funny you mentioned that because one of the hospital rooms, like one of the doctor's office that is on our ground floor at work. I've gone in there one night to clean, and we got so many different units, that we clean in. There's, it's a big hospital, and there's like 50 different areas people can go to clean. And there was one night I was put in this particular unit, and this doctor's office had the lights were off except for one thing. He had a string of R2D2 Christmas lights.
I also make a Yoda head, so
Yeah, so it was kind of funny seeing these little R2D2s like strung along there. I had to take that in there for a minute.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we talked about merch, and I've watched you on Facebook always presenting the mugs. You always have the mugs. And I've always teased you about you should get a hammerhead mug with a twisty straw.
Right.
But you
It's
got lots and lots of mugs, and I'm kind of curious about what other merch you have. And I thought this would be a good idea for you to do a little show and tell for us, for the Star Wars fans on here tonight.
okay.
So,
Well, I will do my best with some things. I have, what do I have? I have a little bit of everything. And as from a collector standpoint, that's the worst thing to do. It's like, because, way back when I was like, oh, I'll just buy one of everything. And you realize that there's no way you can afford that unless are very well off. So, and even then, it gets very hectic. And then the storage of that, the keeping up of it, and so that's where it gets crazy. I mean, I've got Hallmark ornaments, that every year they come out with, a number of Star Wars ornaments. I've got, believe it or not, I've got some electric guitars. Fernandez came out with electric guitars quite a few years back. Lightsabers, action figures, 12-inch. And, kind of like you, the majority of my collection started um, probably 95, when the trilogy, right before the trilogy came back out in 97, they started releasing, some new merchandise. And unfortunately, a lot of the original vintage type stuff, lost in various situations of, like uh, floods or rain or, things like that. And so, unfortunately, I think I only have maybe one or two pieces of vintage stuff because I was getting ready to get out of college and whatever. I was like, I'm starting to make a little bit of money. I kind of want my toys back. So, I started, purchasing things. Um, but yeah, I mean, so my collection itself has, quite a few things. I mentioned the ornaments, the mugs, obviously, the uh, with the action figures, comic books. I have quite a number of the Gentle Giant busts, statues type uh, figures, and you name it. I've got a little bit of everything. Artwork. I could probably wallpaper my house with the amount of artwork that I have. It's just over the years, been fortunate to meet, a number of the artists and, been able to acquire, prints from most of them, one or two or a couple of them I've got, some original stuff, but, for the most part, it's, the prints that came out for either like celebration events or San Diego Comic Con exclusives or things of that nature. So, like I said, over the years, I've collected quite a bit of artwork, which unfortunately I don't have enough room to display everything. But I have books, like the extended universe, expanded universe. That just the different storylines that go through there. I mentioned lightsabers, the DVDs, VHSs. It's like list because I've got some Funko Pops. Again, it's just a little bit of everything. I've got wardrobe, a bunch of shirts. Let me see that. This is a kind of a neat print. That's a Japanese artwork that's got again kind of the Samurai Vader helmet
Oh,
and
nice.
like Han and Leia, Empire Strikes Back. So like I said, just different things like that. I try to find, obviously to have licensed materials are from a collectability standpoint is the best if you're ever looking at reselling. But it's also fun to have bootleg things or things that people have made or um, costumes that people come up with. It's like I'm amazed at the amount of talent that there is out there from just the costumers and cosplay people that are out there. Just it's incredible. Um, One of the cool things, and you're talking about, uh, part of the collection, something that I have here. That let's see if I can get this thing open and let's see if you can see it here. I don't know how well that's showing up, but this is actually the mold of a medallion that I was fortunate to be able to sponsor for the Star Wars celebration in Europe. And
Nice.
so the final product, see, I'm not sure how well this is going to come through, but
Oh,
it's
nice.
a fighter. And then on the back, you can see that
Yeah.
focus. So it's got my name on there as a sponsor, and it's an officially licensed product. So I am now in the Lucasfilm archives for that.
How cool is that, huh?
And along with the set is kind of interesting because there was a piece that this is the X-wing fighter,
Oh, beautiful.
but when they stamped it, it was an error. So my name is actually on the back of this one as a sponsor on the wrong coin. So anyway, that was something that was kind of a neat thing to be able to be a part of. Um, let's see, and then there's a company called Invicta, which they make watches. And so here is one of the Invicta watches. Is that coming out? Or is that?
Hey, oh, there you, oh, Boba Fett.
Yeah. So this one's a Boba Fett. And I was looking through, I just wasn't able to find it in time. But, I know how much of a Greedo fan you are, but I'll pull it out at some time, see if I can and send you a screenshot of it. But I do have a Greedo watch as well.
I'll be
So,
frank, I'm a big Boba Fett guy too.
so
Yeah.
let's see. I'm trying to think, what else do I have down here that I can get a hold of? This, I'll be able to see it very well,
Look at that.
is a saber that you can make in Disney at their shop there. And this is a very heavy hilt. This isn't one of the cheap little plastics. I mean, these
Yeah.
probably nowadays, I think they went up in price, but it's probably close to
Do you use
two
that to
two
keep the
fifty.
fish in line?
I do. If they don't stay in line, I zap them with it, heat up the water, and so you know they learn to they learn their place. Here's something that's kind of neat. Again, this is something that you can pretty much find
Oh,
at
nice.
Disney. Rebel pilot helmet with the mic and what have you associated with it.
How
Yeah, this
cool is
is
that?
all right.
Oh, you're gonna
I'm
put
forced.
it on.
I'm forced to
Nice.
do this.
Look at
There we go.
that.
There we go. Rebel pilot, red leader, ready to go. Anyway,
That is so cool, man.
um, but yeah, it's like I said, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff. I will see if I can bring this with me, if it'll cooperate here. I'm going to try to go mobile and see if this will work. My phone's unable to get my phone to kind of go with me. But here's something that I picked up this year at San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh. Oh, wow.
I don't, like I said, I don't know how well that's coming through, but this is a digital pinball machine.
Yep.
And I will see if I can find one of the games here just to so you can see some of the graphics on it. I think I'm changing the languages here. I did. But as you can kind of see some of the graphics. Again, I don't know
There
how
you
well this
go.
is showing up or not. But
There's-
yeah, and then of course the screen there.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so the artwork on these things are really nice. I won't bore you by playing it, but it's one of those things that I had there that I thought might be of interest. And let's see, kind of walking around the house here.
Uh-huh.
Um, here are a few of, let's see, where is it? There
Oh,
it is.
mugs.
There's,
Okay. Now.
there's a few of the mugs.
Oh, you got some Boba Fett. You got some Yodas. You got Darth Vader one back there.
Yeah. So again, those are some of the ones that I have. And was speaking of, let's see, here's a Hallmark. This was
Nice.
a Celebration exclusive from Bo-Katan. Um, so the Mandalorians. Let's see. So I could try to head upstairs and hopefully not hurt myself here. I was in the
Yeah, we
process
don't
of
want you to
actually
do that, especially on here.
live. So if it goes black, anyway, yeah. So one of the things that, again, I was pulling out a bunch of stuff because, I'm always having to archive. So um, I'll let you see a little bit of the mess that is part of the Star Wars room, but you can kind of see um,
Oh, look at that big Darth Vader.
some of that stuff there.
Yeah.
Let's see. And I will attempt to get to this other side here. Because like I said, I've got a bunch of boxes where I was sorting some of this stuff the other day.
It kind of looks like my apartment.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's pretty intense. All right. This is an obstacle course. We'll go this way. So while I'm on my way over there, here is if you're back in the 80s,
Oh, look at that.
can you see that?
Yep, I can.
All right. It's like one of the Star Wars video games there.
Yep.
Try not to, oops, taking things out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see here. Get around this. Yeah.
That is the room of a collector.
All right. Yeah. So we will. Over here, and like I said, I was pulling some stuff out.
Oh my. Oh wow.
So you can see, let's see, let me see here. You can
That
see
big
that,
job of the hut.
yeah, some more of the mugs laid out. Again, there's a lot of the Gentle Giant type stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I actually do have some things that are cased nicely. Um, but looking up at the room here, you're talking about the 12-inch figures.
Oh wow. Yep.
And these are all kind of like the 97 and above.
You have Princess Leia, so do I. Yeah.
And then what am I showing here? Okay. Yeah, this is kind of hard to do with a laptop, but
Yeah, I can see it though. Yeah.
okay, good. But yeah, like I said, the Gentle Giant stuff. Um,
Somewhere here in my apartment too, packed away. I have a good sized Princess Leia from Return of the Jedi, where she was chained to Jabba the Hutt.
right.
Yeah, I have the little red felt thing that was with her and all that stuff, and
There's more of the deals there.
nice.
Um, yeah, there was some other things I was trying to find. I know they're probably out in the room here, um, but yeah, there. That's probably a better angle.
Look at that. Here you go.
But yeah, it's like I said, just all kinds of stuff. I have a lot of cards. Um,
Mm-hmm.
let's see what I have in. Otherwise, it here. Um, let's see if I have anything interesting. Mm, one of the old Star Wars costume, like Halloween costume sets
Yeah.
with this is your Leia,
Uh-huh.
I believe. Trying to find something. No, it's not there. Yeah, I'm not sure where I put it. But I do have, again, this is just a small collection of, books and things like
Yeah.
that. Um, if I can get this, see if this will capture. I think I did. What is missing? Okay, let's see if this will work.
Oh, look at that. That is some cool stuff.
And here you have the Book of the Sith.
Look at the Sith. Yep.
And so these other ones have something similar. Yeah, these are some collection versions of some of the books and stuff that they had available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so like I said, I'm not sure what all y'all wanted to see, but it's a little
Oh,
bit
that
of.
was great. Yeah.
Uh, but again, like I said, I've got some, a lot of trading cards from back in the day. Um, I do have a set of cards that were distributed by a company called Authentic Images, and they were typically sold on like the shopping channel or some of those HGTV type deals or QVC. And I was looking at them. I was like, hey, those are pretty cool. They're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a 24 karat gold or 23 karat gold, I believe, um, card. And there was a set of, I believe there was 15 or 19 of them total from the original trilogies. And then, so then I got those and I started looking at them. Thought they were kind of cool
Uh-huh.
and started looking at them. And, again, as a collector, they had a print run, a serial number put on them. So then when I started collecting them, I ran into one that was just like, it didn't have anything on the back. Usually they have some kind of an engraving of the number and stuff. And so I noticed it and started like looking for either low numbers or the ones that had like maybe a PP, which is print proof, or um, uh, a number on the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, started going through finding stuff and was just like, found a few that didn't have any numbers on the back. And so I was like, start collecting these. Well, I ran across a guy he was out of, uh, he was selling them to a guy in Ireland. And, I was like, because I was looking for one in particular. And he was like, well, I'm not breaking up the set, but, I've already thought I would sell these. So, but if something falls through, I'll let you know. Because I was looking through them and I was like, I asked the guy, I was like, hey, I'm noticing that there's not a serial number on the back. He's like, can you look up for me? So he went back and looked at it and it's like, well, it doesn't have one. It's just plain. I'm like, really? So then, obviously my interest really peaked. So I was like, well, do you mind me asking, do the rest of them have serial numbers? And he was like, no, they're all blank. I'm like, my heart is racing and going nuts. And so um, the deal with, the international deal fell through. So he contacted me and said, hey, do you still want these? I'm like, yep, let me know how much. And, so I sent him the money, he sent them to me, and they all came back plain except for one. One of them actually had a number on it. And it was, I'm like, okay. So then I started scouring the internet, eBay, whatever, looking for this one card that didn't have any kind of a number associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that search went on for, and I kid you not, for 10 years,
Wow.
looking for this one card. Well, then I was fortunate enough to get invited to um, basically the guy who's got the world's largest collection, private collection. Um, and if you're in the Star Wars realm, this guy's name is Steve Sansweet, and he's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the largest um, collection. And so he opened up a museum basically in Petaluma, California. It's called Rancho Obi-Wan. So if
Mm-hmm.
anybody gets a chance to go out there to go take a look at that, you need to go if you're into Star Wars because he's got more than you can imagine. So anyway, I'm at his facility and just looking through all the stuff that he has. And I noticed, there was an area where he had these um, cards. I'm like, he's got some of these, some of the same stuff that I had. And of course, he had duplicates of things. So I'm scrounging through everything, and I look and I find the card I was looking for. I'm like, just out of curiosity, what is the number on it? It's blank. I'm like, no wonder. Well, then I see another one and I look at it and it's blank. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So to kind of give a little bit of context to this, as I was looking for these cards, I'd actually called the manufacturer and said, hey, I found these cards that aren't printed. Can you tell me, are these legitimate or could they be faked? And he was like, no, the process that it takes to fake something like that or to counterfeit it is way too much. It's way too expensive for the equipment that you would need to do that. He says, no, if they're they say the authentic images. He goes, they came from us. So I was like, okay. So basically, I told him that I had found a whole set of these things, and he was like, they shouldn't have left here without having some kind of stamp. So was able to jog his memory a little, and he had stated that there were two sets that he ran before the release of those cards, and that they were for friends. You know, he had one collector that he made them for, and then he distributed another set, you know, like to different retail shops or whatever as a thank you or, you know, a gift or whatever. So I called him back and was like, hey, I just came across basically a full set of these things. And so I'm just trying to make sure that they're authentic. And he's like, yeah, they came from us. He goes, if you want to send them back, he goes, we'll stamp them for you. You know, if you want. I was like, well, can I just keep them as is? And he's like, yeah, sure. You know, whatever you want to do. You know, you bought them. So was able to confirm that, um, you know, there were only those two sets in the world. He goes, if you've got the whole set, he goes, you're the only one in the world that has it because there were only two print runs that were done before the actual set was done. And the other thing that was interesting on them is that, you know, they came in these acrylic cases. Well, you could see where they had over tightened some of these, and so it gave that spider web effect from where they had over tightened the screws. And again, that was another thing that caught my eye was, okay, these were print proofs because they were probably still trying to get the amount of torque that they needed to keep the screws in place, you know, and they shattered a couple of them while doing that over pressure. So coming back to, I'm scrounging around through these cards. Well, I see that Steve has both blanks. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, you know, I kind of wormed my way over and said, hey, Steve, I noticed you've got these cards. Like, would you be willing to trade for it? Or, you know, I'll buy it from you. So he starts giving me a hard time. He's like, so you're saying that um, I have the last card that you need to finish your set. I'm like, ah, crap, I'm going to get, you know, he's really putting the screws to me here. It was in fun though, and not, he wasn't being facetious, but he was like, so again, I'm just trying to get this straight. This is the last card you need to finish your set, huh? And I'm just like, it is killing me. I'm just like, look, are you going to trade or not? And he goes, well, he goes, it is your last one, right? I said, well, Steve, you could look at it as you have the last one that I need, or I have the last five that you need. So which way do we want to look at this? And he just started laughing, like, ah, dang it. Like, all right, you got me. He goes, no, he goes, if you want, I'll trade you a numbered one for one of these. So I was very fortunate and thankful that, you know, he was willing to make that trade. But, you know, that was one of my holy grails, if you will, to try to find because, again, apparently only two of them were ever made. He had both of them. And so now I have, and I've got, you know, a letter from or an email from the manufacturer basically stating that if, you know, um, that is an original, it's authentic. And basically, if I've got that whole set, I've got the only set in the world of that specific, you know, pre-print proof or pre-run set of cards, you know. So that is kind of one of those, like I said, holy grail type things for me. You know, some people don't care if it's a print proof or part of the series or not, but you know, for me, it was just kind of being able to collect a set of the cards that did not have any kind of number or print proof or any markings. It was just the blank back uh, cover of the card.
Oh, you know what? For 10 years, you know, that's actually a pretty good conclusion to it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
No, I'm glad that came full circle for you, you know,
yeah,
worked out for you too.
I was thinking I was never going to find it, but you know, just kept looking for it. and eventually came through. So
Yeah. Don't mind me here. My battery's getting low, so I just plugging my thing in here.
no worries.
Yeah. But you notice my cat had jumped in there. He's my
I did.
Chewbacca.
Nice.
He's
You
my
keep him.
Chewbacca.
Got to keep him away from the fish tank.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think he heard me mention fish. There we are. They're perfect. There. No, that was interesting. I enjoyed hearing that, and collecting is a pretty interesting thing, especially whenever you actually come across these things and you get your hands on them. So, you know, I don't know what happens to stuff when you're young, where stuff, because you go to the cons and you see this stuff on display, and you see the action figures as they were whenever they sell them for astronomical prices, But but I remember after Star Wars, I went into Masters of the Universe, and I actually started collecting the origin figures of those that just came out, and it's like these are done better than when we were young, because articulation's better and whatnot and all of that. But quite a lot of memories come out of this and all these movies and whatnot. You come up with stuff there that I'd never even heard of, so
Yeah,
you,
it's crazy. And like I said, kind of going back to Steve's place, Rancho Obi-Wan. I mean, there's stuff in there that's just, there's like you would have never even imagined that would have been made into, merchandise. And and a lot of it. And the fun thing about that trip is hearing the behind the scenes stories, how they were acquired, where were they made. Like there was a bantha that he has. It's a piñata that someone in Mexico made, years ago, and it's a beautiful piece of work. And he's like, yeah, he got a hold of it, and it's part of his collection. But it's just simple thing, and the craftsmanship on it is incredible. Um, but it's just things like that catch your eye. Comic books now. You have variant covers. You could have one comic book that's got 20 different artists that did a cover for it now. It's all about making money. I get that. But, at the same time, it's kind of cool to have some of these pieces are, one of a kind. You've got the mass print, but one of the things that a lot of the comic books started doing, especially, with Star Wars, Marvel, those, um, they'll develop a blank and, it would be a white front with, whatever the comic actually is. And you can get, artists that are associated with that franchise to, commission a cover. So then it becomes like a one of a kind cover for whatever that specific comic is, So um, that's the hardest part about, being a collector is like if you're a completist, that's probably the worst because a lot of times it's very difficult to get one of everything, so to speak, Um, but anyway, but it's fine. Some people will uh, only collect droids or only collect creatures, and then you break that down into a specific creature. And depending upon who it is, like for example, R2 as a droid, man, there's so much R2D2 stuff out there that even just focusing in on that is tough. Um, there's a collector group out there that deals with Yak Face, and so the character of Yak Face, and that's what this group is all about, and you would be surprised at how many items there are with Yak Face on it.
oh
It's
wow.
just crazy, um, but again, or the the Ugnaughts or Chewbacca, you try to, or bounty hunters. Well, okay, as the expanded universe has grown, the number of bounty hunters have, increased. And so, uh, again, it's kind of tough. It's probably better to try to focus on certain things. But eh, to each their own, whatever you can afford, go for it, um, one of the questions I get a lot is, well, how much is your collection worth? And my just straight answer to that is whatever someone's willing to pay for it. Because, some of these pieces there's no, you know, there is no set value to it. It's like whatever you feel comfortable taking, whatever they're willing to pay, that's what it's worth. Um, Obviously, if you've got something from the set itself, from a collector standpoint, that and it can be verified as screen used, it's obviously worth more than something that you pick up at your local store. But if nobody wants it, then it's not really worth anything, right? It's more of a sentimental value to you. So yeah, that's one of the things I try to tell people too, is that if you're going to collect something, unless it's something very specific that already has a known value to it, I wouldn't worry so much about, what you can get out of it, because, at the end of the day, it's all going to go back into the ground at some point or another, so if you can quote rent it for a while and enjoy it or pass it on to somebody, let other people enjoy it, so be it. But at the end of the day, it's all going to go back to the ground. So,
Ain't that the downside to collecting, huh? It's
yep,
like there's a verse in the Bible that says, if you have food on your plate and clothes on your back, that's all you need. He said, "What what is it accumulating this and that? It's like chasing the wind or something like that." It's kind of like, yeah,
yep,
but it's fun to do. It's fun to do, but it's like yeah, it's like when God looks at me, it's like, why do you have all this junk?
yeah,
That's and it's kind of funny, but it makes us happy for a temporary period, I guess,
yeah,
We only get to keep our souls, that's it. We don't even get to keep our bodies. So
yeah, yep. And another story I had, on something that I stumbled across. Actually, I got two more. Some cards. They were back when they started re-releasing the collecting cards from Topps. There was a set that was out there, called Finest, and they were kind of neat because they had almost like a, um, oh, what would you call it? A foil or, embossed type card. And so one day I went into this comic shop. And this was like I was just about ready to graduate college. I think it was, sometime back in that day when I had started picking up pieces here and there. And I went into a comic shop, and they had this beautiful binder that had these cards in it, and I was like, oh man, that's really nice. And so I was asking the guys, like, well, how much is, you know for that set of cards? And he looks at it, he's like, it's like, well, I'll sell it to you for $60. I'm a poor college student. And I'm like, oh man, it's a full set. I like the binder. All right. So I went ahead and bought it. Well, years later, when eBay, was real big and it first came out, so you're finding everything there. I go online eBay and I saw this set of silver cards that was like this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let me see if I can get it. It must be a parallel set. So I go on there, and that set was like 15 or $20. I'm like, man, what is the deal? So then I started doing a little more investigation. Well, it turned out that the set that I was sold happened to be the gold parallel set, in which it was something like one in every 60 boxes, one of those gold cards were found. And so to kind of put a value on it, the last time I saw any values on these, those individual cards were selling for 80, 80 to $100 a piece. And there's like 90 of them, I think, in the set. So if you tried to put that together now, it would cost you about 10 grand, 9 or 10 grand. And that's just for those portions. There's other chase cards that were associated with that I've got all of those as well. So, it's so that was one of those when I realized that I actually had the gold set as opposed to the standard set. I was like, whoa. So, again, that was something I stumbled on. One of the other good finds that I got was I showed you that Boba Fett Invicta watch earlier. Well, they also did a Boba Fett and a Darth Vader version of that watch that has like diamonds around the outside um, of the face of the watch, and like I ended up picking up both of those. It's still kind of high, but they're about three or $400 for each one. However, I think the people that had it didn't realize that they had the diamonds around it. And to be honest, I didn't notice it at first either until they came in and I saw the diamonds there and I was like, is this what I bought? So I went back, looked at it, looked it up, and those were retailing for about 12 grand a piece. So I was like, that's nice. I didn't pay anywhere near that, but again, now would somebody give me 12 grand for it today? I don't know. And doesn't really matter because I plan to keep them for a little while.
Hmm.
But again, it's just you never know what you're gonna stumble upon. And you get some of these neat finds and it's a lot of fun when you do. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you mentioned Comic Cons and whatnot. Have you ever gotten to meet any of the actors?
I actually have been very fortunate to I've done special events with Lucasfilm since about 2007, I believe. Um, the first item that I worked was Celebration 4 when it was in Los Angeles. And at that time, I got to work with the Autograph Alley. And so I worked, with the actors, helping them, with their autographs and doing that stuff at that time. And since then, I've been to Japan, London, Germany, and looking to go back to London, hopefully in April. Things work out um, to work, the Star Wars Celebration events. So between San Diego Comic Con and Star Wars Celebration, I've worked with most of the um, actors that have come out. I worked quite a bit with Carrie Fisher, with Peter Mayhew when they were alive. Been fortunate to work with Mark and Anthony Daniels. So, you know, I've been very fortunate in that sense. So, short answer, yes, I have worked with quite a number of the actors and actresses from the franchise.
What was Carrie Fisher like?
I loved her. Like everybody, she had her ups and downs, and it's you know when she was up, man, she was great to be around. When she was down, it's like, oh, we better watch out. But that's anybody, and but I loved Carrie. She was such so fun. She and her dog Gary, they were like inseparable. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, she, had a lot of good times. Stories that I can't share, but but I have them in my memory that make me laugh every so often. But anyway, but
I
yeah,
always thought was funny she went from Star Wars to stalking John Belushi and the Blues Brothers.
Right. Yeah, that was a total character shift for sure.
Doing her fingernails, uh, putting nail polish on her fingers, and they curl up and die salon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I haven't had anybody from these films on the show. I'd like to. We lost the guy who played Boba Fett. I would love to get Paul Blake, who was Greedo.
Yeah.
If I could ever find contact, but
And there's also Maria de Argonne who represented Greedo as well.
oh
It wasn't
wow,
just one. Yeah. And
okay. You'll have to send me that name so that I can look into that.
right.
But yeah, my favorite color is green. So I mean, when it comes to Masters of the Universe, I always liked Merman,
Right.
because he was green. So that's the thing there. My favorite color is green. But but at any rate, these enhanced my imagination growing up. Ray Harryhausen's Clash of the Titans was another one. I always
Yeah.
loved that movie, and stuff like that. And so I got a lot of memories with these and seeing them at the drive. Did you see any of them in a drive-in theater?
Not the Star Wars. I take that back. Star Wars I did. I didn't see uh Jedi or Empire, but I did see Star Wars one time at the drive-in. Kind of go back to the old Sinbad, Jason of the Argonauts, those the stop motion type films. I remember seeing those in the drive-in theater.
Yeah. Clash of the Titans was always a special favorite, and I like the Golden Voyage. Actually, I've had Caroline Munro on here, and I got to meet her at Horrorama last year, or this year, excuse me, and that was awesome. She was, of course, in the Golden Voyage of Sinbad. So, yeah, a lot of that stuff brings back a lot of memories for me, and some of that gets lost today, with although I don't want to totally crap on today, a lot of people do it, but I still think there's a lot of great stuff coming out today as well.
Uh,
So yeah. So do you ever look at your fish and say, "Boy, these look like Star Wars creatures"?
the pleco every once in a while he's pretty big. The other ones are I've got a couple of them in there that I think they're one fin short. They kind of swim in a vertical motion. You're like, wait a minute, and like not this way, but swimming like this. Like, what is going on here? Like, they're not in their right mind, but or they've got a deformed fin or something. But it's kind of a weird thing.
Oh
First, I
yeah.
thought first I thought it might have been like some kind of a mating ritual or something. But yeah, now it's just they're abnormal.
Now you mentioned Carrie Fisher at the cons. Is there any other con stories with these actors that you have?
Let's see. Some that I can tell. Um, let's see. Yeah, there's a few. Obviously, Peter Mayhew was, incredible. He was a great guy. And he was one of those that, I always remember they wanted Dr. Pepper, and coffee from Dunkin' Donuts kind of thing,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and so for whatever reason that was what he liked,
Who'd have
and
thought Chewbacca liked those things?
exactly. But it was yeah, I mean they were all great. They all had different stories to tell, and I remember you're talking about both the past sense, but Jeremy Bullock and Kenny Baker. They was talking about Jeremy was talking one time about how when they were filming, Kenny was in the R2D2, you know costume or whatever you want to call it, and the thing had caught fire. And so they were trying to bat out the fire, and but Kenny didn't know it was on fire. So all he knows, these people were trying to hit him, and he's like fighting back or whatever. He's like, "Why are y'all hitting me?" And, kind of going back and forth. And Jeremy was like, "We were just trying to put the fire out." And it was, again, it was one of those, could have been a dangerous situation, but Kenny was oblivious as to what was going on. All he knew is people were hitting him, and so he starts hitting back. But it's like stories like that come about. Mike Edmonds and Mike Quinn, talking about, and Mike Quinn being a puppeteer or whatever, and some of the stories that they had with trying to deal with the puppets and everything. And Mike Edmonds was one of the Ewoks, and he was Logray, the Ewok, and but he also operated the tail for Jabba the Hutt. And so he was would tell stories on how he was stuck up in there, and it's like it was hot and they couldn't hardly breathe, and working under these conditions. And of course, about being out in Tunisia or whatever, where they're shooting all this stuff, and it's all desert. And it was just some of these stories, like I said, that's the beauty of being able to sit around and just like absorb some of these things, because it's the behind the scenes things that you never get to see, or and unless you are able to converse with these people, you just never get to hear about that. But to me, those are always the fascinating stories to hear.
Yeah. I don't think there's ever a chance they're gonna get Harrison Ford at one of these things, huh?
Well, no, he's actually attended several,
Has he?
but not as a like a signing guest.
Oh
He like
wow.
he's attended a couple of Comic Cons, and it's on a panel, where they were doing everything. When Force Awakens came out, I believe that he was at that San Diego Comic Con there. But yeah, he's attended a few. He doesn't do it very often, but every once in a while he'll show up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how torches get passed because when Star Wars was done, one of the big things that helped it was having Alec Guinness play Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because he
Right.
was an Oscar-winning actor from
Right.
Bridge over River Kwai. And I think a lot of people were counting on Mark Hamill to be the big breakout star. It ended up being Harrison Ford,
Right.
and which, went on to do, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, and what have you. And it's always interesting, and I hope to meet some of these people before they go the way of the Force, so to speak,
Right.
and leave us. But I certainly have a lot of memories, and I was glad to have you on here today because I always see your posts on Facebook, with the mugs and whatnot. And I just kind of, because I had you on here to talk about 13 Fanboy, and you was on with the group, and talked and whatnot. And I was like, here's a story right here. Have you come on here and just talk about your passion for Star Wars, and it's something that just kind of stood out to me, and I thought it would be a great idea for an interview today. And this was really worth it. I was really glad to have you on today, and you've always been great. I'm a little estranged from 13 Fanboy right now, if you've heard any of the gossip, but
Yeah,
that's
don't
fine.
pay
But
attention to any of that.
well, you know what? That's fine. But I I really appreciate having you come on here today and uh, and talk about your passion for Star Wars. And yeah, keep. I always look forward to seeing those pictures. You with the mugs.
Well, it's funny because that just started as a, I don't even know how I started. I remember I posted one day, and just like, hey, I have another one over here. So then, I just kind of started posting a little here and there. And then it got to a point, it's like, well, people ask me, how many mugs do I have? And honestly, I don't know, because as we were walking through some of this stuff over here,
Hmm.
I saw a couple more that I didn't know that that I had or had forgotten. So I'll be probably posting those here in the next few days or weeks or so. But yeah, so honestly, I don't know how many mugs I actually have. To it's and that's part of why I've got a lot of that stuff pulled out is that here over the last couple years, I've acquired a bunch of things that I haven't, been able to um, categorize yet, and so kind of needing to go in and inventory a bunch of this stuff. So again, I've been pulling it out and repacking it and trying to get similar items into the tubs that so if I go to look for something, I know at least somewhere where it's at. But yeah, it was kind of funny. And then, people started enjoying seeing the different mugs and characters and whatever. So I was like, yeah, what the heck? I'll go ahead and just keep, posting until I either run out or um, people get tired of it, one of the two.
Oh,
So
I don't get tired of it.
but
I don't get tired of it, but yeah, I'm right now in the midst of getting some of those plastic tubs, especially the ones with the wheels under it,
right.
and getting stuff organized because I am certainly not organized here, and I've been in this location for a couple years now, over a couple years, and so it's yeah, getting stuff organized and put away and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But no, it was wonderful having you come on here today and talk about these memories and yeah, 45 years. Star Wars is 45 this year.
it's hard to
Where's the
believe.
time gone?
No, it just keeps rolling on and keep getting older and I still feel 25, I guess, somewhere in there. But
I'm 50 and I feel every bit of it. I got a thing in the mail right after my 50th birthday. A thing in the mail
AARP from
said,
AARP.
huh?
Was it from AARP?
I don't know, asking me about a colonoscopy, and I'm like, "How about happy birthday first, man?"
Right? It's like, at least wine me, dine me first. But that's funny.
I turned 50 and they already want to probe me.
Oh well, gotta love it.
Well, you know what? Thank you so much for
Well,
coming on here today. I'm gonna let you get back to your fish because I think they're getting impatient
I'm
back there.
sure they're getting hungry. So
They're getting hungry.
yeah,
They're plotting.
yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, this was fun. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always
this was
enjoy.
a lot of fun, and I'm glad we were able to make this work out. And yeah.
Yeah,
Just one more question. Do you ever, in your car, do you ever put that big
the
helmet
helmet.
on and
It's funny. I just recently got a new car, but my old car was the green, almost like the Slave One Boba Fett's car or color.
Okay.
And so, um, if it wasn't for the fact that I had just gotten this one, I was almost to a point of getting a wrap to make it with the Boba Fett color or some kind of a Star Wars wrap to put on it to bleed through because those colors was the right color of green to make that happen. And I ended up getting the new car, so I don't have that one anymore. But I missed my shot. I missed my chance.
There you go.
It would have
Yeah,
been cool.
people could have looked over in the next car and seen you with that helmet on and
Have not worn it out like that yet, but it's not to say I
yet.
won't. It's not exactly the key word being yet. So I'm not above it.
Why not? Why not?
Right.
Why not?
Gotta enjoy life. Gotta enjoy life. But,
Well, you know
no, that
what?
was it.
I appreciate having you come on here today. This was a lot of fun
Thank you
and
for having me.
yeah, absolutely. So God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Take care of the fish and may the force be with you.
Ciao.
Take care, man.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.